Today's webinar is covering performing remote assessments. So if you'd like to follow along today, go to our website, riskwatch.com, put your professional email address in, and request access to our platform. It's free to start, so you could even start a remote assessment today. You will have an opportunity to select a content library to use in that assessment. That's one thing that we provide off the shelf for using in our platform. So if you want to conduct an assessment from a physical security perspective, maybe use this industrial physical security or cyber, maybe the NIST cybersecurity framework. We do provide over 35 content libraries off the shelf for use in assessments in our platform. What we're going to cover today at a high level is this workflow cycle, which basically when you look at any assessment, you have these common stages. Really, when you look at the first stage here, this focuses on communication and then leads to collecting data in the workflow. So after completing those two stages, then the next goal from there is to analyze that data and score it. So from there, we move into determining, what corrective action should be taking, and then actually suggesting those corrective actions. You do have reporting, within each stage, of course, but normally bulk of the reporting activities occur here at this stage. I'll be going through this workflow in RiskWatch today. You can go through this workflow in any of our platforms. But before we do that, let's try and put things in context around how we provide value in these stages within the platform, and really how we can help you do remote assessments. So just looking at a case study here, let's say you provide some service, you have a consulting firm, or you are an internal services team within an organization, and you need to conduct an assessment internally. And let's say that you're using a more manual assessment process now. Maybe you're using spreadsheets and Excel and file shares, or maybe a SharePoint site. So in that scenario, when you look at the process for doing an assessment where you're not leveraging a system or some type of automated analysis or communication or those things, 100% of those activities that you do are manual. You're doing them all with your own time. So when you look at those stages that I mentioned a moment ago in the previous slide, and you have the ability to automate communication, you have the ability to automate the collection of data and the initial analysis, you have the ability to automate scoring, and then anything that you do from a corrective action standpoint or recommendation standpoint can all be reused. So what that means is that you can go from spending 100% of your time to easily spending 20% of your time doing the same activities, but even better, leveraging the automation in the platform. And then from there, as you continue to use the platform, because of the workflow and the capabilities that we have, we can even further improve the amount of automation as assessments are performed. So just one more use case here, not so much an external organization where a system isn't in place, but just looking at more of an internal perspective. If you're a manufacturing organization, for example, and you have internal sites, or maybe your organization does vendor assessments, for example, and you have a system where you're doing that now, maybe a portion of it's automated, but there's still challenges, right? Like participation, analysis, that central repository of data, or automated activities coming out of assessments. So even where you have a system in place, there's still tremendous value in using our platform to perform these assessments, because it's built exactly for that. We've been in this space again for 30 years. So when you look at just increasing participation in assessments or analyzing data instantly, not just for one specific area, but combining and consolidating all this data into an overall view that's interactive that you can now drill down into. So All of this can even be performed with even less resources. So if you're in a situation now where maybe the team's been reduced due to the current events, or maybe you can't travel, you can still get the assessments done that you need to get done through using the application and those capabilities that it provides you. So let's keep these cases in mind, and let's go look at exactly how we can help in the platform. So first, just putting this in perspective again, the best way to understand how the platform can help perform remote assessments is to look at a traditional assessment process and kind of compare that to what that process would look like in the platform. So let's say that we need to do an assessment right now. We know what the scope is, we know who the participants are, and we know what criteria we need to do that assessment against. So let's say we have those three things here on the platform, and we're going to go and create this new assessment. So from here, we can determine how we want to structure data, how we can draw clear lines of separation between one area and another area. So let's say this is a brand new assessment. We've never done it before. We've never entered any of this data into the platform. So there's nothing pre-existing to leverage here. But let's say I'm going to assess a facility. So first I'll go and I'll create that record. I'll create that bucket to hold all of that information. So let's say that I call this Facility 1. Now, anyone that I need to provide access to this area or to participate in the collection of information or receive the results of the assessment, I would include as a contact for that area. So if, again, assuming that the persons that need to participate in this are not in the application already, I would click a plus symbol here and add their email address in and any additional information that I want to include for them. But at a minimum, I need their email address so the system can send automated communication to these individuals. So here I have this record I've called Facility 1. There's a lot more I can do in the platform that I'm not going to cover today, just because, well, it looks like I've created that. So let's say this is Facility 10. So I have a Facility 1 already in here. Oh, I have a 10 too. Let's call 101. There we go. Finally found one that I didn't create already. So from here, I can select that facility. Yeah, look at all those numbered facilities there. So I'm going to do Facility 101. But you see how I've organized facilities in a way that I could assess each one of them separately. So again, today we're just going to do the one area. And from here, I'm going to select the criteria that I want to address in this against this area. So here, this is extremely flexible. When you look at, again, these content libraries that we provide, for example, one of them is ISO 27001. But for those of you that are familiar with this framework, there are several underlying areas that can really be selected or included or excluded as part of an assessment. So that is how our content libraries are structured within the platform. So we break down a library into categories so that you can easily select a portion of it. So for example, if I want to do all of the administrative controls within ISO 27001, I can do that. Or if I want to do a section of the NIST cybersecurity framework, I could select just the detection piece. Or if I want to include maybe an area from ISO, NIST, and our physical security criteria, I can combine and consolidate all of these areas into a single assessment and address them all in the same assessment effort. So here I've selected some criteria, I've selected my areas, so let's go ahead and give this a name. So I'll call this RiskWatch Assessment 2020-04. And I want this to start today. So I'm gonna leave the start date set today. If I wanted this to kick off on Monday, I could do that. And then I'm gonna leave the default of 30 days here, but I could adjust this to finish sooner or later. Now, over this time period, what's going to happen is those individuals that are associated with this area are going to receive automated communication. Now, I can customize that communication based on any of my own requirements. So if I want reminders to go out at a certain time, or I want to receive a notification if someone doesn't start, I can adjust these things within the settings. But the point here is to, when I create this, that we create a closed loop email communication channel or workflow. And that's what happens by default. So when I create this assessment right now, if the individuals that are associated with this area don't start providing that information, or maybe one of the individuals responsible for one of these areas doesn't start providing that information, the platform will intelligently communicate with those individuals to remind them that they have this assessment to participate in. And from there, in the event that they don't respond, I can escalate maybe to their boss, or maybe back to myself as the person that is responsible for getting this assessment done. I can do the same things from the end date here. So in the event that I want to remind them if they're not completed, maybe they've started it, but they haven't finished it, I can remind them a week before it's due that they still have to finish this. And maybe 3 days before it's done, if they're still not finished, I can get that alert. But let's take another perspective. So let's say that, that we create this and the individual receives it and they complete it. In that scenario, I could also get an alert. So now I know that I can come in and start working through the information that was gathered in that assessment. So that's kind of how we automate communication around assessments. It is smart, it's scenario-based, and customizable. So let me put that in perspective as to what a participant, their experience would be in the event that I invited them to participate in this assessment. So an individual that I associated with this area would have just received an email. And again, that email can say whatever I want it to say, but in it, there's a series of links. They can click a link and open up the assessment in their browser. They can click a link and download a mobile app on an iOS or Android device. So we do have mobile applications that not only support collecting information on those iOS and Android devices, but they do also allow you to do assessments offline. So if you won't have a connection to the internet, that's a use case for our mobile app. You can still do the assessment in our platform, receive all the same benefits that I'm showing you today, and then not have to, duplicate your effort there in collecting the information on paper and then going back and entering it into a system. So that's kind of the value behind using the mobile app in the event that you need to go offline. On those devices, if you're on an iOS or Android device, maybe you're on a tablet, you don't have to use the mobile app. You can just use the browser and open up the application that way, so that works too. Now, so the user is going to click that link in the email, and it's going to take them to whatever it is that we requested from them. So I'm logged in as an administrator here. I have access to several screens. An individual that is a participant to an assessment would have wouldn't have all of these tabs up here. They'd have a much slimmed down view of the application geared towards their specific role, which is customizable as well. So by default, when that user comes in, they're going to only see this section and the areas that we've associated with them. So again, I can see all of the areas, but if I was a user logged in, I would only be able to see this area. And I would have specific tutorials that would pop up that would take me through how to use the platform, how to do an assessment within the platform, provide the information that was created. So I have a lot more tutorials here as an administrator, but again, that contact would have much less capability. And you can see how intuitive this is here. Even just this piece with all of the functionality turned on, it's very easy to use. So when you look at this piece, no training required. Our customers do hundreds of assessments like this every day using this exact process. So when we look at what we have here now, these are the categories of criteria that I selected. these are customizable. You can change the names of the categories. You can change the number of criteria within each one. This represents a question that I'm asking. This is not how I have to collect data. This is the approach that we take off the shelf, but we can ask for and collect anything within the platform. You can add your own sets of criteria and your own criteria that you want to collect within them as well. So this is an example of a custom response here. So I can have any number of options here with any text. And then based on that response that's selected, the system knows what to do next in that scenario. So here, this might be listed as a finding in the report, or maybe in this scenario where I say, no, we don't have barriers to discourage or prevent access to restricted systems. So in another scenario for scoring overall, or giving some type of partial credit, if you do that in your program now, or if the framework supports that, like PCI, there's a partial response type, for example, we can incorporate those responses as well, and the values that they would equal. All of that's configurable within the platform under the response manager. You can create and customize your own responses and collect anything you want. So here, when you look at the control that we have and the capabilities we have around logic and scenarios playing out, this is where the process in doing an assessment becomes very different, right? So just going back to a traditional approach, you might send a spreadsheet, or you might send a form or some type of Word document to push an individual through, providing you with some information and maybe just general questions in an email that they send you. So from there, you can have all sorts of issues. They put the information in a format that doesn't support your analysis, or they break your spreadsheet, or the Word document they send back to you is in a PDF format. You just can't take the information that you did manage to collect and do anything with it. So here we're eliminating all those challenges by allowing you to adjust what it is you want to collect and exactly how you want to collect that information and analyze it, and any scenarios that you would need to play out. So let's take this one for example. So let's say that we have a system in place. Well, in the event that we do have that system, it makes sense to collect additional information about it to further assess that system. So if I was to say yes here, you see I only have one control within this area. There's nothing else on the screen. So if I click yes, in that scenario, now I have an additional 12 controls that I need to address because I have that system in place. So this capability is customizable as well in the platform. I can force it to occur in scenarios like this. And what this does is it removes all the back and forth that you have and that traditional approach. Again, if you send that spreadsheet out and they say, yes, we have the system in place, well, now I need to collect that additional information. So now there's back and forth in that process. In a scenario where I include all of that information in the original spreadsheet, as an example, now I've got 1,000 rows, a wall of text for that person to look at and provide. So the process is not efficient either way unless you have this kind of capability. And this can standardize your approach to performing an assessment. So if you have an internal team that goes and does these assessments, one of the biggest challenges there is for everyone to be able to do the assessment in the same way and come up with the same end result. And this forces that to happen. It removes subjectivity from the model. So this is different ways that we can automate collecting exactly what information is required. Now you do see additional options here, like a comments field or an attach file button. And what this can do is it can force comments in a scenario, or you can just simply allow them, like I am here in this scenario, where a user can just input a comment or attach a file. So this is kind of how we collect data in the platform. Look how intuitive this is here, just trying to understand where you're at in process, what you have assessed, what you haven't assessed, just exactly where you're at in completing this assessment. There's filters and additional capabilities to get to exactly what needs to be done still within this assessment. But this is the perspective that someone providing you with an information into a remote assessment that you'd be performing, this is what they would see. This is what their experience would be like. So let's say I'm the individual performing that assessment. I go through, complete the assessment. What would happen at this point is the person that would review this assessment would get an alert, or the next person in the process would get an alert. And they could go and perform analysis on that data. So imagine you're the person that's receiving the end results of that assessment or the initial analysis of it. You just got an alert in your inbox, and you click that link and it would bring you to this screen here. So notice we're not seeing everything that I provided in the assessment. We're only seeing the things that deserve our attention. We're focusing your attention on the things that you wanted to see here based on how they responded to that control requirement, or if they're not meeting the control requirement within that framework that we're providing you. You would see the areas that would present an issue or a vulnerability or a risk. So I can adjust this view to see everything, or just something that I don't have a recommendation in the system for now. But again, the goal here is to focus your attention. Now from here, we can go back and forth. We can comment on criteria. We can look at files that were uploaded into it. And most importantly, we can view recommendations. So just looking at finding and fixing issues, you notice there's a recommendation here already. So I can edit this, I can make changes to it, I can offer my own. But when I do that, the system will save that information, so I don't need to enter it again. So that means if I find this issue for another area that I'm assessing, it's already fixed. I don't need to write that recommendation again, unless I need to do something different in this scenario. I might need to include the information there. Now in one click, I can take all of this information and turn it into an activity. So if this is something that I want to take action on right now, I can go and assign that to someone, and then associate it with a due date, and use that same closed loop email communication to ensure that this activity is done. So from here, next step might be to provide someone with a report. Reporting is extremely efficient in our platform. We use a templating based process. So we give you all the sections that you should need for most of the reporting that you would probably have come out of the application. Now, if you have a custom report now and you want that to come out of our platform by default, we do provide service to pick those up and put them in here for you. So you don't have to do all of that customization yourself. But what you're seeing here again is a default report that I'm in full control of. This is like a Word document here. For those of you that are familiar with Microsoft Word, which is just about everyone, you can use this tool right now. You can edit, design, style, put imagery, font, text in here that would represent what you did in the assessment, or the methodology that you used to perform the assessment, or the results of the assessment. So here I'm in full control over how data displays within that report. And I can download that report for any area. So the end result of this is basically you have different templates over here to support different assessments that you might do, but you'll never write a report. For any assessment you do, the most you'll ever write a report is once, building it like this. And even that, again, we can do for you. So getting close to the end here, there's a lot more in here that I of course wanted to cover today, but just looking at performing a remote assessment, this is the process start to finish, kind of how you can do that assessment in our platform, analyze the results, and generate a report using that information. Our dashboard's great as far as real-time perspective of analysis and just trending risk over periods of time, breaking down areas of risk and scoring them, as well as compliance measurements, viewing assessments that are in progress or activities coming out of them. So these dashboards can be made available to other users within the platform. So just going back to a slide here in closing, the value that we're providing to help you perform these assessments remotely covers several different areas. You know, being able to communicate more efficiently, analyze data, We're giving you the content libraries as a starting point. If you don't have your criteria, we naturally create that centralized repository for data to support analysis. Any device you can use. This is a SaaS offering. For those of you that did take the trial right now or that are using the free version of our platform, those individuals were able to get access to the platform in minutes. So looking at collecting that information, we 100% protect your information. We provide secure authentication methodologies as well as secure encryption for data at rest and transit, data centers in the US. Not only are we meeting all your security requirements, but privacy as well. So thank you for participating in today's webinar. Looking at doing a remote assessment now, you can go to our website, again, riskwatch.com, and get access to our platform and do an assessment right now. And we'll see you next time.